a team of people who all agree with each other is no better in terms of complex decision making than a single person, because your intelligence is all overlapping. Or a team of people who are diverse in their thoughts, but the culture in the team, okay, is so psychologically unsafe that everyone is too scared to share a view.
Welcome everyone to the second episode. Today I would like to invite you to go on a few expeditions around the world, including Mount Everest. Are you ready? We will have Grant X. Rawlinson. He is originally from New Zealand, but has been based in Singapore for 20 years. He has made over 50 expeditions across the globe, including walking across countries, cycling across continents, climbing Mount Everest, and crossing seas and continents completely by human power. He works with corporate teams to help them make more effective decisions together in complex environments. X, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's so awesome to be here.
So let's first understand your story. Can you tell us about the story?
I'm a human-powered explorer and team decision-making coach. So my purpose in life is to make exploratory human-powered journeys through the world's more remote environments. This is, for the last 25 years of my life, it's really my life purpose. So I form teams to take on these expeditions, to walk across countries, cycle across continents, row across seas, and climb mountains. So it's a really exciting journey.
Your life is anything but boring, I can see.
Last 2 years have been a little bit boring, to be honest, with COVID and all the restrictions. I've thrashed Singapore to death in terms of exploring Singapore's more natural wonders. So I'm really looking forward to, in answer to your question, it actually has got a little bit boring in the last 2 years, but hopefully that's going to change again soon.
So tell us a little bit about your you did more than 50 expeditions. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, like I say, what I really am passionate about and driven by is making expeditions using my own human power. So no engines, no sails even in sailing boats, but using kayaks, using rowing boats, using bicycles, walking, trekking, climbing, etc. So I've just made lots and lots of trips in different parts of the world. From the summit of Mount Everest to crossing seas, rowing boats across seas, and cycling across continents, and making lots of journeys that I look at a map and I look at certain starting points and destination points which have meaning to me. And then I work out if I can connect the dots really by making a journey using only human power, which is a fascinating challenge.
So what drives you?
Well, it's fun. It's, when you make a journey by human power, it's you understand the environment in an intimate way, whereas opposed where you fly by airplane, you literally get on the plane in one environment and then you get off the plane in another environment and you've skipped everything in between. You don't understand anything about it, what is in between. You don't have any appreciation of what is in between. And the journey for me is more important than the destination in this particular expeditions. It is the journey. It is understanding. If you row a boat from Singapore to Australia, for example, you understand every intricate bit of the Indonesian archipelago much more than someone who takes a plane from Singapore to Darwin. So I love that exploration and geographical understanding and experience that I get from these journeys.
Wow. And so which one was the most challenging expedition that you did?
Possibly my most challenging phase or stage of an expedition has been crossing the Tasman Sea between Australia and New Zealand. That's a very rough part of the environment in terms of the sea. I've tried that 3 times so far, and currently getting prepared to try it for a fourth attempt.
And so in that expeditions, which one was the most difficult decision that you had to take?
Oh, the most difficult decision is fairly straightforward, to be honest. It's once I had children and making the decision to continue. It alters the dynamics of decision making in a way that I think is impossible to put into words until you experience it yourself. One thing is going on to expeditions where you risk your well-being when you're single, but then when you have the responsibility of a family, it adds another dimension to it.
Can you give us an example just to understand what it is to be there?
Well, I'll give you an example. The first time I left to attempt to cross the Tasman Sea, my children, I think, were somewhere between 6 months and a year old. They're twins. I've got two little girls. So when I drove to Changi Airport to get in a plane to fly to Australia, I knew that I was leaving on something which potentially I may not come back from. That is the reality of that type of expedition. You'd be a fool if you didn't at least grasp the concept of the severity of what can go wrong. So that was a very difficult decision. That was the first time that I'd left them, because they were only 6 months old, to go on such a project like that. So that was a very tough decision, being in the airport at that particular time and waving goodbye to them. And if they could have talked, I was looking for any excuse, to be honest, to turn around. If they'd been able to communicate with me and said, "Don't do it," I was feeling extremely fragile at that particular time. So it was a very challenging 1 hour. It was the most challenging flight that I've ever boarded. I was crying my eyes out and trying not to show it, of course, when you're in the middle of thousands of people at the airport, and questioning what I'm doing. And I got on the plane. Once you get on the plane and they shut the doors, then the decision is made. Yeah.
So how do you prepare for an expedition? Like the expeditions that you do take risks. I mean, you put your life at risk. There's always that risk. How do you prepare for something like that? And what can we learn as in business when we are preparing for business?
Basically, it takes years for me to prepare for an expedition. Literally, it is a full-time job for years before I depart. Yet I don't have the time to devote to it for a full-time job when you have a family and you run your own business as well. So it's an enormous commitment. This is the environments that I venture into are not the places to get into to realize, do you know what? I'm not really prepared for this. I'm not really ready. I don't have the right equipment. I'm not prepared. I'm not in the right shape. So preparation is, how do you prepare for it? You take a very long time. It takes a long time. You try not to take shortcuts. And you have to test and trial and break things and repair things and try and put yourself. You can never put yourself in the exact environment that you're going to be in, because literally if you're in a boat 1,000 kilometers offshore, you can't put yourself into that environment till you're 1,000 kilometers offshore. So you try and recreate those type of environments, where you can within your resources and logistics that you have available. So what can you learn from this in terms of the corporate environment? I used to box as well, and one of my favorite mottos or principles from boxing was when one of my coaches told me, he said, the closer you get to the fight, because normally fights are planned like months beforehand, right? And you train and prepare until you get closer and closer to them. And he said, remember that you're never going to do one thing in the boxing ring that you haven't practiced at least 1,000 times before you get there. So, in the corporate environment, is it this extreme? Maybe not for a lot of people. And a lot of people make decisions in the corporate environment, maybe where, they don't have the flexibility or the ability to make that much preparation. But that's the level of preparation that if your life is on the line, those are the lengths that you need to go to. It literally takes a very long time and a huge amount of dedication and support.
I think it would be nice to understand. I mean, it's fascinating. So you went to the top of Everest.
I have
so
been,
maybe
yeah.
maybe you can tell us how was it to go to the top of Everest, and then let's see what we can learn from that. But maybe we can start by sharing how was it the experience of going to the top of the Everest?
Quite cold and quite tiring. Okay. So I tried. I went on. Been on 2 Mount Everest expeditions. And the first one, I didn't manage to make it to the summit. I got very close. The second one, I managed to stand on the top of the world for about 10 minutes. And it was that was a result of many years of hard work and effort as well, and it's also the result of working together in a team as well. And it was, you know, an extremely rich, I would say, and fulfilling experience to have stood on one of Mother Nature's most mightiest monuments. Yeah, very special.
What have you learned during that journey?
Well, one of the things I learned, Mount Everest is a very uncertain environment. And you can have all the preparation in the world and go to Mount Everest and still not reach the summit. So Mount Everest is similar to life in one very interesting way, in that it's not fair. And I mean that in the way that, you know, you can go on a Mount Everest expedition and someone with very little experience can reach the summit, whereas someone with 20 years climbing experience doesn't reach the summit, who's 100 times more prepared because of a lot of things which are outside your control. Ooh. So hard work, determination and preparation, and you're talking before about all the preparation I do for my expeditions, that's not enough to guarantee success in highly uncertain environments. You need a few other things as well. And I think anyone who's been in these type of environments, I think you're fooling yourself if you don't understand at least the role of luck to success in highly uncertain environments. So what have I learned? This applies to business. I have my own business, as you know as well. You know, luck and timing in business is a critical component to success. Of course you need hard work and everything else. You can't just roll the dice in business, otherwise you'll die very quickly. But the role of luck in these highly uncertain environments, the role of chance, the role of opportunity.
Oh, I love that. I mean, this topic is so good. But let's go a bit deeper on this trip to the Everest, because it's so you have a team going to the top of the Everest. What does a team needs to do in order to succeed, or what are the dynamics that needs to happen between a team in order to succeed to go to the top?
Well, there's many different styles of leadership and team cultures on Mount Everest expeditions. And you have certain expeditions where leaders make all the decisions by themselves on behalf of the teams. And, you know, in some situations that is justified because maybe the climbers in the team have very little experience. And then you get a whole range of decision-making cultures throughout other expeditions where you know, decision-making is more inclusive. There is more diversity involved in some of the critical decision-making, etc. So, you know, one of the Everest expeditions that I went on, we had a very highly structured team decision-making culture where a leader was making all the decisions. I went back the second time in a very different decision-making culture where we were much more, there's much more of an inclusive environment, and especially the complex decisions. So I wouldn't say there's any rights or wrongs between these two, because once again it depends on the level of experience of people you have in your team. But for me, on those particular expeditions, being in a team where we were making more, we had more influence and say and inclusion on the decision making, especially for the complex decisions. Because on Everest there's one really massive decision you have to make, and that's when to climb to the summit. You have to make a decision based on ambiguous information about what weather window, and there's only one or two to choose from when you're going to try and climb to the summit. You know, so that's one of the biggest challenges of an Everest expedition, making that decision. You can't always get it right.
Now what comes to my mind is to understand how do you manage conflict within the team in a situation like climbing to the Everest?
Yeah, well, so when it comes to complex decision making, there's always going to be conflict. That's one of the trademarks of a complex decision, is that there's going to be conflict here, because complex decision making have different groups. It's more systems thinking. Different people will have different motivations depending on what part of the system they're in. And this is one of the critical traits to moving towards the zone of high performance. How do you, because conflict is critical to complex decision making. You need conflict. You don't need toxic conflict, but you need people to be comfortable with getting into a situation where you can openly challenge each other's ideas and views. And that's what some people call it healthy conflict. So it's critical for a start to have an environment where this healthy conflict can exist, can flourish. But at the end of the day, you still need to make a decision as a team. And this is where team decision making, what I specialize in with teams, is so important. How do you get a group of people, a team, who may have slightly different motivations, etc.? How do you get them to align together, finally at the end of the day, and agree and commit? Because many teams can make a decision, but they don't. They disagree and they don't commit. How do you get them to align together, agree, and commit to a decision? So, yeah.
What can we learn as a leader that you learn on the journey to the top?
A team of people will always outperform an individual decision maker when it comes to complex decisions. If, there are some ifs here, if that team of people is cognitively diverse, if they have different thinking styles, if they have different experience and backgrounds. So when they come together to make the decision, everyone's intelligence is represented by this circle here. If they all have differing intelligence levels, then their intelligence can combine to become greater. And this is the concept of team intelligence. If you get a team of people who all think the same, who all agree with each other, your team intelligence is not combining at all. It is just overlapping. So a team of people who all agree with each other is no better in terms of complex decision making than a single person, because your intelligence is all overlapping. Or a team of people who are diverse in their thoughts, but the culture in the team is so psychologically unsafe that everyone is too scared to share a view. That's also no help in terms of complex decision making, because it's also the same as one person making a decision, a dominant leader. So one of the biggest things to learn here is really that for complex decision making, teams of cognitively diverse people will always outperform individually brilliant decision makers for these complex decisions. The second thing is that you're never always there are no rights and wrongs in complex decision making. There is decisions which have more effective outcomes for the team. There's decisions which have less effective outcomes for the team. Even with your cognitively diverse team, you're not always going to make decisions in these type of environments which have the most effective outcome, because that's the definition of being in an uncertain VUCA environment. But at least by getting team members involved in the decision-making process, involvement equals commitment. So if you get people involved, the decision does not work out as favorably as you wish, at least the team feels like it was part of the process. They're committed to that decision. You may still even be proud of the decision you made as a team. Whereas if you just try and get one person making decisions on behalf of the team, if it doesn't work out, as a leader, you'd better be very careful how you sleep that night, because you're going to have lots of people after your back.
When I heard you talking about cognitive diversity, I loved it. Like, how can a leader bring more cognitive diversity to the team?
Cognitive diversity cannot exist if you don't have a psychologically safe environment. So leaders should focus on creating an environment in the team where where they're motivating, encouraging, and rewarding people to start thinking differently during the team meetings, not be there on their laptop computers, not wasting a lot of time, not just agreeing with each other, but parking all that aside for their big decisions, coming in there and, you know, creating environments where they can openly challenge each other. I think that's a big point. The second way, if you don't have any luxury of choosing your team, is actually assigning roles. I mean, there's you know, De Bono's 6 hats, and these. I mean, it's all a similar thing. Basically, you just assign roles to people in the team to say, we'd like you to be the challenger. We want you to be the out-of-the-box thinker. Whatever ideas we come up with, challenge this. We want you to be, you know, the creative type. We want you to be the critical thinker. We want you, and you actually assign people within the team to try and think with different thinking styles, to try and generate more discussion, more debate about what the issues are. So that's if you already have an intact team. If you don't have an intact team, but you know, you have the flexibility or luxury, then there's 2 things to think of. First is demographic diversity. Yeah. That is not the same as cognitive diversity, right? Demographic diversity, getting people from different demographics, you know, culture, skin color, age, sex, for example. That doesn't necessarily mean your team will be cognitively diverse, but it is a good start. It is a good start to trying to get more cognitive diversity in your team, getting people from different backgrounds. But you do need to be careful, because the experience that you bring into the team, you say, now I know about cognitive diversity, I'm going to go and get people from nothing to do with my industry whatsoever, because that's diverse. They should be extremely diverse. If they have no relevant experience whatsoever, then they will have diverse views and opinions, but their diverse views and opinions may not be relevant at all.
And also, you also talk a lot about the explorer's mindset, which I find fascinating. And so, can you tell us what it is and how can it help leaders in the environment today?
So the explorer's mindset is also related to this working in a VUCA environment. It's one of the principles to working in highly uncertain and complex environments. And basically, in highly uncertain environments, statistics does not equal probability. Okay, so what worked in the past, this had a 60% success rate in the past, it is a major decision-making bias to say, well, that means the probability of success if we try this in the future is 60%. Many people apply that logic, however, it's fundamentally flawed in highly uncertain environments. Statistics does not equal probability. It is a decision-making bias. You will make some fundamentally critically bad decisions if you apply that logic. So how do you make decisions in highly uncertain environments? Well, you need to explore. You need to become exploratory. You need to try new things. And when you're trying new things, you're working off little data. You are taking risks. You are going to have setbacks. You are going to have failures. Okay, and you may not generate any cash flow in the short term, because being exploratory in business, you know, it's innovating, it's creating. You know, that costs money in the short term. It costs time and resources to test, experiment, fail, redo, prototype, try again before you may generate anything. So unfortunately, I just said in highly uncertain environments, you need to be exploratory. You can't just rely on what worked in the past. But if you're always exploring, you're never going to generate any cash flow. So you can't always be exploring either. You need to be exploratory, but you can't always be exploring. So you also need to leverage and look after your existing as well. It's critical to get the right balance between exploiting in these highly VUCA environments, exploiting, which means leveraging what you've already developed. You know what works, you know what doesn't work, you have low failure rates, you have all the data, that's where you generate your cash flow. But if you get stuck in that mode for too long, you will get passed, you'll get made redundant, you'll get overtaken, you will die. The history of business is littered with the corpses of business teams who get stuck purely exploiting and not spending any time exploring. but you can't spend all your time exploring, as we've just said. So you've got to get the right balance of exploiting versus exploring.
So whoever is listening at home, as a leader, what tip you can give in order to improve the decision making with their teams? Can you give like a couple of tips?
Well, the first thing is really understanding what type of environment the decision is being made in. If it's a complex decision, then you really need to start understanding about the superpower of cognitive diversity and how you can start forming cognitively diverse teams to make these complex decisions. If the decisions are not complex, it will cause you a big issue getting cognitive diversity involved. There's no point. All you're going to be doing is slowing down your decision-making process. You'll become non-agile and cumbersome, okay? And that will also kill you, because we need to make fast decisions. You only need cognitive diversity for complex decisions. If you learn about cognitive diversity, you take it away and you think, I'm going to get it involved in every single decision, okay? Unfortunately, I would say that is a potentially lethal principle. It's the wrong application of it. So understanding what type of environment that you're working in. Is it a complicated environment where you can break it down independently, or is it a complex environment where there's so many interdependencies it becomes almost impossible for one person to understand the complexities of decision making? So that's what I think is one of the biggest things that leaders need to start understanding, is what type of environment are they working in? How complex is it? And then from there they can start making the decision to who do they need in their teams to make the most effective decisions? How can they form teams of cognitively diverse decision makers to make the most effective decisions in these environments?
That is so good. I really love it. Now, if we look at, whatever experience you've been having with the leaders that you've been working, and if you look at the context we are now I'm going to put you to the future. If we look at the future, let's say 5 to 10 years down the line, what is a skill or something that the leader needs to start developing now, that maybe a lot of leaders, they are not aware of it, but it's going to be critical in 5 to 10 years in order to lead their teams?
Yes. I'm not a leadership expert. I'm a team decision-making coach. But I do, it's one of my favorite pastimes is to look at some of the quotations, the leadership quotes, because there's like literally thousands of them being thrown around every day. And one of my favorite ones is this one, and I forgot, it may have been, I can't remember who actually wrote it, but it's that the leader has to know the way, show the way, and go the way. Okay, that is possibly the worst advice I've ever seen for any leader to be taking on at this particular time. Maybe it was relevant many years ago, when the environment was not as volatile and uncertain and complex as it is now. But I think people who are giving that leadership advice at the moment are really sending people down a dead-end street, a wrong avenue. It's terrible advice. Leaders are not God. Leaders cannot predict the future. And as the future becomes more complex and more uncertain, and it is, whether we like it or not, the world is just crazy. It's crazy uncertain, it's crazy complex. The data we have to make decisions is extremely ambiguous. It's so volatile. As the world becomes more complex, leaders have to throw away this outdated leadership adage that they need to know the way, show the way, and go the way. Leaders need to start understanding that their roles are not to make all the decisions on behalf of the teams that they lead, but to get the best decisions from the teams that they lead.
That's amazing. Okay, now to finalize, what's your next expedition?
My next expedition is to try and circumnavigate the United Kingdom in my new pedal-powered ocean-going boat. So that's about 2 months away, hopefully. This boat has taken 3 years to build. It's completely exploratory. It's untested. So for a start, it's a completely untested boat. I formed a team of people who have never been in a boat before at all. And the environment around the UK is extremely volatile, uncertain and complex. So I would say that all the odds are stacked against us being successful at the moment, but hopefully it will be an adventure.
That's what you look for. I think
That's right.
Something that connects us, I mean, you and me, it's this search for adventure, to explore, yeah, so it's been great conversation. Thank you for bringing so much insights on this important topic, which is decision making in these environments that we are living today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all the best for your next expeditions and keep inspiring us.
And well done on the podcast. I can't wait to hear your future guests as well. Keep it up.